And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, a Detroit Pistons podcast, to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into tonight's recap of the Detroit Pistons versus the Utah Jazz, I want to remind you guys of a few things. In tonight's recap, you will see me wearing our new Protect the Ball merch drop, and you can wear this sweatshirt and a crew neck much like this and a t-shirt if you click the link in our YouTube bio. That will shoot you right to Grind Clothing Co.'s website, and you can look at a plethora of designs designed by Grind Clothing Co. So make sure to support your favorite Detroit Pistons podcast, Revved Up 906, by wearing our new Protect the Ball merch drop. I really enjoyed this merch drop. It was a fun one. It's a coin phrase that I use a lot, and I might even bring it up in tonight's recap with the Detroit Pistons having 18 turnovers tonight. But let's get into tonight's recap of tonight's matchup. Tonight's final score was let me pull it up here. 148 to 154. It was a high scoring game tonight. And the Jazz obviously were the winner in overtime tonight. We saw Alec Burks force overtime with a buzzer beater 3-pointer, and then overtime hit, and the Pistons just sort of struggled shooting, getting stops, lots of fouling. You never like to see an overtime finish like that when it's so many. It's just kind of like a hard to watch overtime. We saw that happen versus the Boston Celtics also a couple nights ago. But Ryan, what are some of your first takeaways from tonight's matchup of the Detroit Pistons versus the Utah Jazz?
Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovic, two former Jazz players, put on an absolute clinic, especially from three. I mean, Bojan Bogdanovic, 8 of 15 from three, and then Alec Burks, 5 of 9 from three. Like, those guys they couldn't, well, I would say they couldn't miss, but they could miss because they did. But no, they had fantastic shooting nights. I made the comment the other night when we were playing the Rockets that, I mean, Alec Burks had 21 points, and he was one of our main contributors in even being in that game. The last couple nights out, he's been one of those key players. And like, and I even said this prior in a couple recaps back. Before the Raptors game, he had been in a shooting slump. And then I made the comment after the Raptors game that he came out of it, and it's evident even through tonight because he finishes with 27 points, 9 of 17 shooting from the field, 5 of 9 from three, like I mentioned, and then 4 of 5 at the line in 34 minutes played. These guys, both of them, are very instrumental pieces when it comes to winning for us. It's not always Cade that is the high scoring player. And so you always need some complementary guys to fill that up. And they were that tonight for him. I mean, Duran, too, 17 points. Livers had 10. Ivy, 11. Wiseman, 8. Like, these guys all had good scoring outbursts at opportune moments. And I would just say the complimentary basketball tonight was at an all-time high.
Yeah, I mean, Cade, Bojan, and Alec Burks combined for 93 points. So, I mean, that is just absolutely ludicrous numbers from those three players tonight. And I think that Cade's third quarter is really what rallied the Detroit Pistons. We saw Cade get 15 points in the third quarter, and that's kind of what pushed this Pistons team to force overtime and get that kind of good shooting in rhythm. And I think that when the Pistons, obviously in today's NBA, 3-point shooting is so crucial. And that's one of the things that is one of the biggest what ifs for the Detroit Pistons, especially with Alec Burks having his early season slumps. But when Alec Burks, Bojan Bogdanovic, we even saw Isaiah Livers make a little bit of an impact on the offensive end in the 3-point line. When you see that from your complementary players, that is just absolutely crucial. And this Jazz team is no team to blink at. They are going to be very tough in the Western Conference. And so the fact that the Pistons were able to compete with them was just great. Um, Ryan, my stats will not load on my phone. So what are your next things that you want to talk about?
Jordan Clarkson off the bench. He's one of those go-to players the last couple of years that he's a walking bucket. That's literally his job. That's what everybody would define him as a walking bucket. Um, Tonight, 38 minutes off the bench, 36 points, a steal, 3 assists, 6 rebounds, 10 of 11 at the line, 4 of 5 from three, and then 11 of 20 from the field. That that just hurts when you have Jordan Clarkson go off like he did. I would say eliminate him. We win this game. But I mean, you can't like Colin Sexton, Lowry Markkinen, Fontecchio. These guys are not like bad players, but I would say Jordan Clarkson off the bench tonight killed us.
Well, yeah, and the Utah Jazz overall as a team offensively shot 52%, which is like, ah, dang, I wish the Pistons defense stepped up a little bit. But the Detroit Pistons, on the other hand, scored 53% from the field. So to kind of flip the coin a bit and talk about the Detroit Pistons offense, Ryan, there hasn't been many outings where they have been this efficient. Typically, on any other given night, this is the recipe for success, the recipe to win, shooting over 50%. But Laurie Markkinen and John Collins, these guys, and Colin Sexton, they kind of play this. You don't know how to stop the Jazz, like you said, because then you got Jordan Clarkson coming off the bench. You got Talon Horton Tucker that we didn't get to see tonight. I believe he's dealing with injuries. But this team just has like so many players that can make a huge impact on any given night. And sometimes it happens all in one night because we saw Laurie Markkinen have 31 points. So, like you said, Jordan Clarkson's 36, Colin Sexton's 25 points. Ryan, how, because we had Jalen Duran back, so he's back from injury. It's not like our defenders are injured. Do you think that if Asar Thompson gets more minutes tonight, this game looks a little bit differently defensively for the Pistons? Because we didn't really see Asar Thompson very much tonight, nor have we seen him very much in the last 5 games.
I honestly think it does change, but in a negative way. The minutes that Asar Thompson got tonight, he just he it wasn't looking like Asar Thompson like we've seen him before. He was sloppy with his ball handling. He wasn't shooting the ball great. I mean, that's historically speaking, that's what Asar is. He hasn't shot the ball great, historically speaking. But his defense was even a little shaky tonight too. I know he's aggressive on defense, which is good at times, but against a good savvy offensive team in the Jazz, when you have Clarkson, who can, like I said before, is a walking bucket, when you have all these guys who are shifty and know how to score, it's kind of hard for Asar Thompson to be aggressive in that sense because you already know, like, from a ref standpoint, they're going to get the call majority of the time. So I will say, I think Asar getting more playing time in the later stretches, like in overtime, like in the situation where you had Killian get called for the off-ball foul in the late stretches of overtime, which caused Lowry Markkinen to get the one free throw. Then the Jazz get the ball back. I think throwing Asar Thompson in that situation over Killian Hayes would have been better, just because from a defensive standpoint, Asar is a better defender than Killian Hayes is. But overall, I wouldn't have changed it too much because Alec Burks was hot, Bojan Bogdanovic was hot, and so it's kind of hard to make that call to take out one of those two guys that were so crucial in us even being
Right.
in it tonight. So I honestly think it would have hurt us to have Asar Thompson out there a little bit more than what he was already.
We saw the Pistons have 43 bench points tonight. And obviously, a huge contributor to that was Alec Burks. But a guy I want to focus in on is James Wiseman, because it was so crucial for him to show up tonight, because the Utah Jazz have a plethora of centers to choose from and so much length on this team. So it was crucial for James Wiseman to show up. And I really liked his stat line tonight. He finished with 8 points, only one personal foul, which is a big thing for him. That's growth. And then 9 rebounds, 4 of 7 shooting in just 17 minutes. James Wiseman showed up tonight for the Detroit Pistons. And I think that was another crucial reason we could keep up with the Utah Jazz tonight. I was very happy with James Wiseman's play.
Yeah, the last couple nights he's really been given the opportunity to show what he can put out there for us. We saw it against the Rockets, even though we sucked against the Rockets. He given his minutes, he was still very productive. We've seen that at every night out since really Marvin Bagley has taken a step back in the rotation. And that's not because Bagley's bad. I think he's dealing with a couple lingering issues in terms of injury, but then also when he's out there, it does seem like he kind of hurts us at times, offensively and defensively, where Wiseman has the height advantage, can battle amongst other bigs in the league just because of his height alone. But yeah, I think given his opportunity tonight, when you have like guys like Walker Kessler, Lowry Markkinen, Kelly Olynyk, it's kind of and even John Collins. It's nice to have a big in the paint who's 7'2", has a crazy long wingspan, who's known as a shot blocker. It's always a great. It's great, especially when you have Jalen Duren, who at times does get into foul trouble and can get gassed a lot. It's nice to have that extra length off the bench. But yeah, I think James Wiseman's play the last couple nights, I want to see more minutes out of him.
Kind of highlight Jalen Duren a little bit. We mentioned him earlier in the episode, but I kind of wanted to talk about Jalen Duren a little bit more because this was his 8th consecutive double-double. That's the 3rd longest streak in all of the NBA for most consecutive doubles. But it's even more impressive that Jalen Duren got this 17 points tonight and the 12, he got 10 rebounds rather, because of how deep this Jazz bench is at the 5 position. Like you said, Kessler is such a great shot blocker. Kelly Olynyk, a savvy vet. Jalen Duren, as a second-year guy, 20-year-old, go out there and hold his own against another vet in Lauri Markkinen. I mean, the list just keeps going on, and John Collins. And I was really happy that he was able to maybe not dominate the boards like we see him do in some outings, but to dominate the offensive paint. He really held his own and he's starting to find his hook shots a little bit more, but I think that we're starting to see a little bit more of a refined game from Jalen Duren in these last couple of outings.
Yeah, when you're shooting 6 of 7 from the field, I mean, he did that against the Rockets the other night. He was very efficient. He's been very efficient in the last couple outings, really. But I mean, that's really the story of Jalen Duren. Even going back to last year, he's a very efficient player that barely ever looks for his shot, and when he does, he has a game like tonight, 17 points. When he's in the game, you can really tell. When he's out of the game, you can tell. He's one of those players in which, as I said it before, I think he's the reason why we win or lose games. The play out of him determines that. Tonight, he was great. There wasn't much more he could have done. And this is a situation where other players need to step up. And that's what we got out of Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. Cade even stepped up too. But then when you have, it's just the depth that the Jazz have is what killed us. And the fact that Duren did everything he could possibly do. I mean, I would have liked it a little bit more if he had more of a defensive presence tonight than he has in the past. He's kind of leaned away against that recently. But like when the Jazz have that much depth, it's hard for Duren to Duren is working his tail off out there. He gets gassed fast. And then it's like, do you throw Wiseman back into the game, or who do you kind of fix your rotation around? That's the big question, especially when you're missing Stu. But I would say Jalen Duren tonight is one of the big reasons that we've even stayed or have come close to winning this game tonight. And he's going to be one of the biggest reasons going forward.
The last thing I want to mention before we wrap up tonight's recap, I mentioned it right during the intro. Pistons finished with 17 turnovers tonight. That's pretty high for the Pistons as of late. We've been seeing them hover around the early double digits, 11, 12, 13. That's really where we're seeing them right now at this stage of the season. I find it impressive that the Pistons are able to compete with Western Conference teams, force overtime, do all these things, and finish with 17 turnovers. I mean, once they figure out this turnover issue and giving the ball away and giving away offensive possessions, the Pistons are going to be a very dangerous team. I just don't know when the flip is going to switch of protecting the ball, but it was very fortunate that the Pistons were able to compete tonight with 17 total turnovers through 4 quarters.
Yeah, what it shows me is that this team has heart.
Yeah.
There's been a couple posts on social media recently, specifically Instagram, where the Pistons are getting showed. Like I just saw before we recap the replay again of Alec Burks hitting the buzzer beater in the last sequence there, and there were a couple comments. One person said, "Wow, it really shows you that this team has heart." And then somebody commented off that, going like, "No, you idiot! They're 4-30. Like the record doesn't matter. A team can still have heart. They've proven that the last couple outings, not against the Rockets per se, but the last couple outings, like they've had a toll on their bodies. They force overtime against the best team in the East. No disrespect to the Milwaukee Bucks being 24-9, but the Boston Celtics are legit. Then they take Toronto, and that was a tough back and forth game all the way through to the end and win that game. And that was not an easy game to win either. Then you have Houston, where they're gassed because they've been working their tail off recently. And so you can tell they're tired. And then they come out here tonight in Utah and absolutely put on a clinic everywhere. And
Yeah.
you have guys diving all over the place, left and right, nonstop. And it's just, I don't care what the record is, a team can still have heart. And that's what this young Pistons team has right now, is because they you can tell they don't want to lose anymore. They're done with that. They want to move
Yeah.
on from it. And
Agreed.
so I really think this team does have heart, even if it results in losses. It doesn't matter. They have heart. And my one of my sayings that goes back to my dad's coaching days is, "What's the score? It's always 0-0. Don't The score doesn't matter. I mean, it does when you lose games, but at the end of the day, it's 0-0. You can still go out there and work your tail off, and that's what these guys are continuing to do even during losses like this."
That will do it for tonight's recap of the Detroit Pistons versus the Utah Jazz. Tonight's final score was 148 to 154 in the Utah Jazz favor. Before you guys go, I want to make sure to remind you guys to like and subscribe. And if you don't typically tune in to our Revved Up recaps, make sure to turn on your post notifications button so you can stay in the know whenever we are uploading to our YouTube channel, and you can get our live updated reactions and recaps to each and every matchup. We will see you guys when the Detroit Pistons go up against the Golden State Warriors. Much like Jalen Duren rode Walker Kessler, they're going to be flying their plane or driving their bus to Golden State for that fun matchup. We will see you guys in that recap. Peace.